Ooh, I'm violating the rules already. Well, thank you. I had my predecessor at the University of Kentucky, Ken Evans, said there's no such thing as a bad short talk. I plan to make this one of my very best. Okay. And there's another thing. My dad had a lot of sayings, and I remember them after the fact. I wasn't paying attention to at the time, but one of those is most good experience comes from bad experience. So the whole genesis of this project came from trying to look at the fermentation results of farmers who have actually tested silage for their fermentation profiles and not knowing what to tell them, not knowing how to interpret the numbers because the book says that it was not good silage, but they were feeding it all day long. So that's the genesis, the pain, the grit in the oyster that hopefully made a pearl. So here we go. Project purpose was to define the quality of our Kentucky Baleage or haylage. All these was round bale silage, especially the pH and the volatile fatty acid profile, because Dr. Williamson and Dr. Teutsch talked about, we need lactic acid, and we need a pretty good bit of it. And Ben showed the graph. We need 3% of it by dry weight in those bales. We want the pH to be low because bad things happen when wet bales have high pHs. And we wanted to, in the second half of the limited work that I did, characterize the equipment usage and other practices. And I have a working theory in my life that when two people even that may have divergent, they're going at truth, but they're going from two different directions, the closer you get to the truth, the more they're going to agree. And so a lot of the things that we're seeing in farmer practice actually line up completely perfectly with Dr. Williamson's points about drying rate and so on. So let's just take a look. We did interview farmers about their practices, and we'll talk about those. And here's the one that we don't want. We don't want botulism. And if you talk about probably the greatest fear with making round bale silage, if somebody has never made it before, and that is that they fear because they've heard of real cases of botulism and deaths of animals, right? So we wanted to develop some confidence in being able to say this is going to work. So we located and sampled a diverse set of bales and analyzed for moisture content, nutritive value, and the volatile fatty acid profile. That's the lactic and the acetic, and especially butyric, because the lactic is the good scores, and if you got a lot of butyric, that's the bad stuff, right? I do want to thank the agents involved, and this is the group of agents that were involved also. Dr. Limcooler and Dr. Arnold are on our state staff. Samples were taken in central and northern Kentucky across 3 different years, most of them between 18 and 19, small grains and so on, 44 from the first, from 17 and 18, and then 50 from 2019. These were analyzed at a certified commercial laboratory. Use the same procedure that Ben did when he sampled the round bales at the end, 5 bales, 2 cores apiece, okay? Now, the producer surveys were done in 2019, and we had 39 surveys, 39 different lots of baleage that we characterized, 15 different producers, 5 different counties in this data. What did we find? For forage type, small grains were 11 of the 39. Next, grass and grass clover were 11, alfalfa and alfalfa grass 7, summer annuals, native warm season grasses, and then soybeans and millet. Not the same soybeans that Ben had in his work. The mower type, and I thought this was interesting, especially in light of what Dr. Williamson said about getting to 60% moisture, that it really didn't matter what kind of mower that you use to get to 60% moisture. The conditioning rollers don't give you an advantage. And true enough, we had good baleage made with people who had just straight mowing machines. And we had good baleage made with people who had conditioning mowers. And it was about a 50-50 split. By far and away, the most frequent type of rake is a wheel rake. And one of the things that I have learned, and I know we need to talk about, and Dr. Williamson talked about ash and the fact that ash in bales displaces the good stuff, right? Ash is dirt for the most part. Forages have some mineral content, just like you and I do in our bodies, but we know what that ought to be. And when that's elevated, of course, that's taken the place of good stuff, right? Forage. The other thing that it does, and Chris talked about this, is the fact that the soil is the number one source, most common source of Clostridial bacteria in anything. And so in our baleage, when we operate a wheel rake, and they have to be down, you know, close to the ground or touching the ground, the more dirt they move, the greater the amount of ash, the greater the chance for Clostridial fermentation. So it matters, but most of our samples were from wheel rake farms, okay? And they made good baleage. So it's not a death sentence if you use a wheel rake, and you obviously know that. But we're trying to make divergent facts come together, right? This idea of ash not being a thing you want, but yet it's something that comes along with some of the equipment that we use, okay? So we can manage that. Now, another point that I don't make here is that anything planted in rows with bare dirt, of course, between the rows is going to be prone to have more ash. So that's small grains and sorghum Sudan type materials. Even alfalfa. But our grass and grass clover that tend to be more, complete cover tend to be lower. Individual versus inline, about 2 to 1, inline versus individual. And until I hit this kind of area in northern Kentucky, I thought, well, nobody does individual wrappers much anymore because they use more plastic and it's slower. But in fact, a lot of people choose to use them. And if you look at, I don't want to get that in there yet. The cost of the individual wrappers, while you can get cheaper ones that are cheaper than the most expensive inline, actually the numbers for those equipment overlap in terms of cost. So it's not necessarily a cost savings that make you go one way or the other. You have more options and flexibility with an inline individually wrapped bale because you obviously can take it different places on the farm, feed one bale at a time different ways. You can even sell them, right? When you have a long tube of 100 bales, of course, that's where they're going to be. You're not likely to move them. Here was the shocker. What I was hoping for when we interviewed the farmers was that we would be able to tell with the type of crop that we raised and whether it was spring or summer or whatever, that we would be able to say, okay, this many hours in the summertime for this crop and this many hours for this crop in the spring. Wrong answer. And Ben plotted, Lord help him, Lord love him. He took all that data and plotted it out to try to figure out, can you tell a difference? Did it make sense? Not a bit, not a bit. I mean, we had some that got ready in 4 hours, and we had some that wasn't ready at 72, right? And it was totally, of course, the weather that was going on at the point of trying to get the material dried down, which was the driving force for this, hopefully that we could get the windrow tester to help us out, right? To let us know when we got in the right range. We're still working on this part. Now, this is the moisture data from 2019 of all the samples that we did. And you can see, if you total up the numbers that were below 40 and above 60, there's more outside the range than there is in the proper range. And as Ben pointed out, most of our baleage is on the dry side. Well, so moisture testers. Interesting thing, this is the Bale probe that Ben used at the end of his trial. When they baled the bale, he would probe the bale and get his number. This is what we use for the windrow tester. We have used this on all of the baleage samples that I've got, which is about 100, right? And the agreement after the bales have ensiled between the windrow tester and the actual, I mean, not the windrow tester, this one, the Bale probe, and the actual moisture is awfully good. I'd say R square of better than 90, okay, which is in biological systems just really good. But in Ben's work, and his work is different than mine in that he baled it, he probed it right at baling. So this idea of has the bale, are you testing a homogeneous product for moisture, is got to be playing a big role in the accuracy of the results that we get when we're trying to find the real moisture content. So there's, even when I thought, okay, great, this is accurate, but it was only accurate as I used it 30 days after baling in a plastic coated bale, right? So the moisture content in that bale had equilibrated. When he probed it right after baling, he was 10 points off, which is too big. That's not helpful. That's with baleage, right, right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly right. Thank you. Yeah, good point. All right, let's move on for a few other things. Let me just say that the forage quality was good. I broke it out by the type of forage and the kind of the parameters we're looking for. But let's look at the lactic acid just to simplify this just a bit. We were able to hit the 3% well with the small grains and with the summer annuals. Both of those are fairly easy to ferment. The grass, we didn't get there. The legume, we did not get there. It was still good. It was still good baleage. We just didn't get to the lactic acid numbers that we want, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. But look at the moisture content of both the alfalfa or alfalfa grass and the grass, more 50%. Look at the moisture of the small grain samples that we had and the summer annuals. It was wetter. And you remember the graph that Ben showed you, and I think I'm going to show you a cousin to it. When we get close to 60, the lactic acid numbers get right by the book, right? When you get below 50, then we don't get lactic acid. Now that was the genesis of my problem of why I wanted to characterize and sample, test a lot of this baleage because, if it's not 3% lactic acid and the pH is not 5.0 or below, is it safe to feed? If you go to the book, and we were going to the book, our own literature would say, we're concerned about this, right? But in point of fact, you dig a little deeper, and baleage is a different animal. As you get drier, then the parameters change. Also, and I'll say it now, and I hope I'll say it again, there are two reasons why baleage is stable. It's stable because you get low pH and high lactic acid numbers, and the other one is because you have made it anaerobic, right? There's no air in that bale. So all the bad organisms that like air can't grow. Okay, let's move on. The fermentation, these are the 2019, the cousins to what Ben showed you, and you can see very much that is when we're 40 to 60%. Let's see what happens next. Good. My goalpost, right? Same thing. Here's the moisture range. Here's the 3% lactic acid. Alan, I think those three bales are yours, right there. Alan is remarkably good at hitting 3%, no matter what moisture content he does. So put Adam on the program and let him tell you how to make baleage. But you can see that the wetter we are, let's go back. The wetter we are, the better we were able to hit the right moisture content. And the pH, again, if 5 is your goal, we began to approach it more when we got down here to 60% moisture. Now, I don't think I say this well at the end, but I'll say it now. The research has been done to take a look at some of this dry baleage and try to get a handle on, is it safe to feed? Is it stable? Are we just taking a huge risk when we make it that way? And in point of fact, that when the plastic stays intact, then that baleage is good to feed. Now it may start to heat up faster once you pull it out of the plastic. and it will, and we can measure that. But you probably have at least 4 days, and maybe even 7, before it begins to get really bad. And most of the time, with cattle, that bale's not there at 7 days, right? It's gone. So, correlation of practices to good baleage, yes. Cutting early, tight bales, mowing what can be wrapped in a day, moisture content in the upper half of our moisture range, 6+ layers of plastic, and plastic integrity. The biggest train wrecks I've ever been involved in after the fact were where we had gashes or problems with the plastic integrity, and especially maintaining that integrity in the first 30 days and when the weather's warmer, okay? Much less concerned about a hole that happens in December than I am one that happens in August. What we don't know. Does mower type make a difference? And I got to say no, based on what we know, but you can't say for sure with these small numbers. Baler type. We didn't have enough of the knife type balers to make a statement about, do knives, are they really a total game changer? Obviously, we can make good baleage with heavy duty balers, but the regular balers. Rake type. We had a few of the bar rakes, but I looked at the ash content differential, and it's not clear enough to make a statement about, a rotating bar rake versus the wheel rake. I didn't have any of the people in this group that had the rotator rake. What do you call them? Rotary rake. Thank you. My Oklahoma dictionary didn't work, so rotary rake. And we had nobody use a silage inoculant, but we know from research that, just as Chris said, when the conditions are on the, not in the middle for really good, but when they're on the edges, then a silage inoculant can help. So, test your baleage, get the forage quality done. That's where you're going to get the ash number, and you're also going to get moisture, but also do the fermentation panel for these numbers. Didn't talk about the percent nitrogen as ammonia. We didn't show the data on butyric, but you'll be able to know from this number, and the butyric number whether or not you may have forage, baleage that may not feed as well as you would like. So that's all. Thank you very much. Oh. Let me say one of the things, Chris Teutsch organized a conference at our cattlemen's meeting in Lexington this year. We've got the proceedings. The theme of that was weathering high fertilizer prices. We got this over here. You're welcome to pick up and take any of these you want. So, thank you.
Any questions? Jimmy, you're saying that if I bale and wrap at 40% moisture, or maybe even 35%, that I can get away with that?
If you use 6 layers of plastic and the plastic stays intact, yes. Yes. And people will keep on baling. In fact, some people use it as cheap barn storage. I don't have a barn for this, but I'll just make hay and wrap it in the plastic and feed it. Some of our own literature would make you think that you really shouldn't do that, and we'll say things like cut strips between the bales so moisture can get out. And in practice, that's not what people are doing. Now we wouldn't keep that past into the second growing season. We've had real train wrecks with that. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Where they wrap it at like 20 to 25% moisture, and theoretically, it should just sit there.
Yeah.
And not do anything.
Mm-hmm.
What are you seeing with that? Or are you letting them look at that
Well,
more? Or what?
There's a bunch of it made, and even when they're not really trying to, right? They're trying to do the 40 to 60. Every one of these was fed and nothing died. So that's my research program.
So I had two summers ago, I had an intern, and that intern's project was sample and then sile hay. We didn't do big bales. We did small vacuum bags. We cut it into 3 we didn't see any spoilage in there. And I think Jimmy hit it right on the head. If you're going to do that, I mean, you've got to get oxygen exclusion from that system. That's the important part. But what we did see was the fermentation go down. So we're really undergoing a partial fermentation, I would say, as it got drier, and it was very consistent line, just like the data shows here. You know, we were up when we got close to dry. I mean, we're hardly getting any fermentation at all. I mean, we're in a pH of around 6. Yeah. But it still wasn't bad, and the quality was still decent on it.
Yes. Yeah.